This is my introductory video to Project Street Scribbler, which has been rolling around in my head for about a year now. And this is going to be a combination scratch build, kit bash, but keeping it within my comfort zone build. I'm going to do a ProStreet. My idea is to keep the car as keep it as stock as much as possible. I'm even going to go with a stock paint job on it, but yet it's going to have big meat underneath the rear end, and the engine's going to be, you know, a little more fancy, you know, than what comes in the kit. But I do want to retain the looks of the car on this build, so I decided not to go with a big engine that's going to be, you know, busting through the hood of the car and everything. I'm going to keep it almost like stock looking, but real obvious that this is not a stock car, you know. So what I ended up doing so far, I did the typical back halving of the car by chopping it. This tub section is from the Dirty Donnie Coronet ProStreet, and I'm using the axle setup from the Dirty Donnie kit. And then I ended up having to scratch build the rest of it because the distance that this dropped, you know, in the original car to work with the rear of the car and the bumper and everything, so I couldn't use the rest of the Dirty Donnie. The distance, you know, from here down to here, and then the length and also the width, you know, because the Dirty Donnie kit just, there was a huge gap and shortness to it. So a little bit of scratch building, a little bit of kit bashing already there. I decided to just go ahead and just stick with the stock engine. Like I said, I'm going to stay in my comfort zone with this build, and I'm going to use the stock engine block and heads and tranny, and then I'm going to modify, you know, customize the rest of it to get it kind of more modern, a modern look. So I'm building this as Street Scribbler 1, and Street Scribbler 2 is going to be this kit with far more modifications, scratch buildings, customizing, and a massive engine, and it'll probably will be coming out of the hood, or there'll be a large scoop on it or whatever. That's part of why I decided to hold back on this one and not go totally crazy with just door, you know, I'm talking about opening the doors and the trunk and everything on my next one. So, and this will all be scratch built, chassis, everything. So, you know, I'm holding it back on, I think this is going to come out pretty cool as it is anyway. Now, I did order the photo etch set, which is, I think, well worth it for this kit, especially just for the grill alone. You know, here's the stock grill. You know, a lot of detail in that thing to be plastic, and trying to bring that grill out. You know, nothing's going to beat this grill. I mean, the grill itself is much closer to a photo etch grill, so. But the bonus is this thing comes with so many parts for this car that can be detailed out, including interior stuff, the entire dash. You've got the dash inserts even. You've got all your battery cable stuff. You've got, you know, just tons of, you know, all your scripts, all your handles, knobs, buttons. I mean, this thing comes with a lot of stuff. This little photo etch set that you can get for this kit. So that's another thing, is that I don't have a lot of experience with photo etch. I've done a little bit. So this is really, I'm going to really push myself to use as much as this as I can and learn from my mistakes on that as well, because I obviously will be using this on Street Scribbler too. So, you know, it's just a matter of pushing myself, but not too far where I don't, you know, actually get it done, you know. One of the problems I ran into is I lost one of the shocks. This is one of the original shocks here. Well, I lost one of them because when I was mocking up to get this set up right, I used white glue to mock up the rear end and suspension and stuff. And when I was putting the parts in, I put the parts in hot water to dissolve the glue, Well, one of these shocks floated out of the water and went down the drain. So I ended up having to scratch build 2 new shocks. Of course, these are just in the rough state. You know, the main thing was to get the pins in the right relation to each other and diameter of the tubing right and all that. Obviously, the top of this is going to have to be cleaned up, and I'll have to do my spring. I'm going to use metal and wind the spring around. But what I did is I went ahead on both these shocks. I drilled a little hole. This here is actually a tube. It's not a solid piece of rod. It's actually a tube that's filled with these pins, and it's filled in the top where I can sand that down. So I drilled a hole that goes into the tube, and I'm going to poke. Let me grab it here. I'm going to poke my spring metal into that hole and then wind it around. But I'll be able to do that after I get these shaped and ready for the spring and painted and everything. You know, then I can poke this in, wind it around after I shine up my metal rod, and hopefully it'll look like a really nice shock. So a little scratch building there, unintended, but I think now that I think about it, it's probably worthwhile kind of bringing up the detail on the shocks anyway, that rear end anyway. So I'm using the Mickey Thompsons from the Dirty Donnie kit underneath the rear, and I guess I'm going to probably go ahead and use the front wheels from it, skinnies. But I ended up, this is the rear rims from the Dirty Donnie kit. I mean, it's pretty nice. They're a little loose in here, and the length, when you put the backing, you put the wheel assembly together, it's actually too thick, so the wheel's kind of floppy. And I got to looking around, and I pulled just the rims. Whoa! I pulled just the rims out of the which one is it? The Street Burner, the Revell Street Burner 57 Chevy Pro Sportsman. These are the rims out of that. They fit in nicer, and it just so happens that the width of this works perfectly with the backing and everything from the Dirty Donnie kit. So I'm taking the rims out of the. Of course, these are just rough cut out. They're not, but they have that more beadlock look to them and everything, and they're very similar to the Dirty Donnie rims, but a lot more detailed and a better fit. So I'm using the rims out of that. But the front rims, let me get the parts here before I get them mixed up. The front rims out of the Pro Sportsman kit that match are too big for the tire, and I thought about changing tires and this and that, but then now that I look at the Dirty Donnie rim, there's not a whole lot of difference other than the fact that the Pro Sportsman just has some notches, you know, through holes in it. So I'm going to go and keep the original Dirty Donnie rims for the front. They match up nice with the back. Plus I like that sleek kind of look to the front. So it's going to be a match between the Pro Sportsman rear. I think it matches up pretty nice. And you know, I've kind of just tucked them up under there and had a look, and I think it's going to work great with the paint scheme and everything. But here's the bonus, is I can keep the entire interior completely stock, because when I put this rear, and I didn't plan this, but there's the rear seat. Look at that. I mean, all I got to do is just nip just a tiny bit off that corner, and this piece is in perfect. So my entire interior is going to be completely stock, aside from, you know, upgraded seat belts and, you know, some ProStreet or ProStreet type things that would be done on a build like this typically. So, you know, I thought I was going to end up having to I thought I might just pull the rear seat out and have to fill in and kind of build in and do this or that or do something there. And it turns out that the whole interior still remains perfect. So this is really going to be, I mean, that was just a bonus that occurred. I mean, I couldn't have asked for it. I didn't plan that whatsoever. That's where it came out. So I lucked out on that one. One issue I ran into with the rear end here from the Dirty Donnie kit is once I installed the axle assembly, the tires were like way, I mean, they were like, here's the body, I mean, they were like way up in here, you know, like it was almost ridiculous looking. It was so narrow, and this body is so wide, you know, compared to the Dirty Donnie, that the tires were just way tucked up in there and funny. So I did have to modify the rear axle, and all I did, I measured what I needed to get good clearance and get those tires out and fill in that wheel well, is I ended up with having to add exactly 1/8 of an inch to each end of the axle. I cut a piece of straw and then glued in a piece of just rod, and the inner axle piece stops against that rod and it puts the wheels in just the right place. The paint job is going to be completely vintage, a two-toned paint job that you would find on the car originally. So I'm keeping it vintage. All the lines, everything's pretty much staying the same. No cutouts in the hood, no nothing like that. Interior is going to be fully full. But then when you pop that hood, obviously it's not stock, and the rear tires are going to be obviously a big giveaway. So that's what I'm doing, and just going to take tips and ideas and things I learned from building this one and put it in the Street Scribbler 2. To me, this is just a beautiful, beautiful body to do this with. I'm surprised there's not more versions that have been built kind of in this way. Although there's been some very nice customs and things. Stay tuned for more from Project Street Scribbler, and talk to y'all soon.